All right, Buta, we are now live on Get the Tea, which is something we've never done before. It's very exciting, and we're hoping that it works out perfectly.
Well, if it doesn't, we'll learn from it. Just like everything else that we do in life, it's an opportunity to learn. Good morning, all, and this is Get the Tea with Buta. I'm Buta Biberaj, and today we are joined, as we usually are, by Nick Gothard. We decided to do something different this morning because of the fact that we have the ability. Nick has the talent, and we thought it would be a novel way to present ourselves to you in your homes and allow you to have the opportunity to ask us the questions. As you've joined us in the past, what we've done is we've had guests on the show, and we've had the blessings of being able to ask them questions and ask what our community wanted to know from them and what we thought was important for our community to hear. So today what we've done is we've opened the floor up for you. Here's your opportunity to send questions continually through our live feeds, as well as the fact that we have received some questions in advance to allow us to have this conversation. So Nick, we can start wherever you wish to start.
Absolutely. So our first question is coming in from Denise, and she asks generally how you think the show's going. With all the people that you've met and the conversations you've had, how are you feeling?
You know how you do something and you really don't know what to expect, but then it exceeds your expectations? That really has been this show. By way of background, COVID really impacted a lot of us in our ability to have conversations within our community. We were limited as to where we could go, who we could see, and what we can do. And then in late December,
Not sure if we've
also,
lost. Oh.
what do you guys think about this idea about us putting together a show that allows us to present ourselves to the community? And it was really very early in my mind as far as what do you think? And they ran with it. And they were, yes, oh my God, that'd be great. That's amazing. That's what we want to be able to do. And literally within about 3 weeks, we met again. And we were trying to figure out is, okay, how do we get the structure of it done? Priscilla, Chris, and I would suggest to individuals are kind of the thinking people. We have ideas, and then it's a matter of like, who's going to help us get them done? So what we wanted to do is get the right person. So I was speaking to Krista about a project that she was working with, and we, as many of you may know, we had women running for the governor of Virginia, and there was a grassroots group that Nick was part of it. So Nick, I'm going to segue to you a little bit, say what your involvement was, and then we'll go back and continue with my story.
Yeah, so they had picked me up, I guess, primarily looking at digital and sort of data side of things to pursue, I guess, their mission and to support that in sort of this 21st century environment that requires all those skills and such. And so I'd done a large amount of the branding, the website, the social media and stuff like that, and had reconnected with Krista sort of in that group. And then she had asked in that group chat, she was like, who did our logo? And I was like, that was me. And she was like, I have something for you. And that's when Buta reached out to me.
So are you intentionally not telling us the name of the project you were working on?
Well, it's called Her Excellency.
And what minor task was that about?
Sorry?
I said, what minor, in quotes and sarcasm, task was that about?
That was about electing Virginia's first woman governor.
Yep, and that was a huge endeavor. So hence my in quotes and sarcasm part is to say that it was not a minor task. It was huge. So that was very awesome for us to be able to see you participate in. So we connected with Nick, and Nick and I actually had briefly acquainted ourselves with one another back in 2019 when I was running for a Commonwealth's attorney. He was working with um, uh, Wendy Goditis. I couldn't remember her first name for a second. I apologize. With the Wendy Goditis' team, and we had gone to an event where I was hosting with Jennifer McClellan, and he introduced himself, and I was like, wow, that is one cool kid. And I would use the term very loosely, cool kid in the sense the kid part, because I'm just happens to be 3 times his age. Not that he's young, but that was really the reference there. So we asked Nick to join us, and I don't know if he took 5 seconds or 6 before saying yes. So that was really a hard time to just wait for that answer, but he joined us and has really been the backbone of what we're doing here. So Nick, thank you very much for one, taking this journey with us, and 2, for literally making it happen week to week. So thank you very much. And to go to the answers to that was specifically asked, it has exceeded my expectations. And reason being is because we've had a chance to talk to different people who are members of our community, and not just talk about what they were doing, but really talk about who they are and kind of what brought them to this part of their lives. And that was very exciting. So thank you for that question.
Wonderful. All right. So while we wait for more questions to come in via the chat, another one that was submitted early on is generally, how are you feeling about Loudon right now? I think that question sort of stems from the fact that we've been in the news a lot, that sometimes it feels like tensions are high or there's a lot going on in Loudon. So, in your place as a community member, as an elected official, as someone who's been having these conversations, sort of how are you feeling?
So that's like a lawyer question with 25 subsets. So I'm gonna try and answer each and every one of them. So if I miss something, just re-ask it. I'm not trying not to answer it. For starters, I'll tell you, if anyone knows me, they will know one thing about me is that I always try to find a positive silver lining in things. And the reason being is because there always is one. Sometimes we get caught in the thick of things where it is very stressful or challenging, and we may lose sight of the fact that the challenge is part of the journey, and the journey is going to lead us to the success that we as a community need to have. Are things right now stressful in Loudoun County? Yes. Is there a lot of tension? Yes. For those of you who may follow in the news or just watch news, you would hear that we recently had a contentious period with our school board. And this was over several things. One was with COVID, whether or not the kids are going to go back to school, and should they go back to school. I would suggest this, and I say this to every one of the school board members. I applaud you. I applaud you for serving. I applaud you for the strength that you have shown. I applaud you for your ability to be able to do what you believe is best for our community. And I say that without necessarily picking a side of saying they were right in deciding not to go to school, or they were right in deciding when to start school back up in decision making, because those are secondary issues. I applaud them because regardless of what decisions they make, there are going to be people who are going to feel that they're negatively impacted by it, and there will be people who feel that they're positively impacted. That's the challenge of leadership. You are never going to be able to match the needs or wants of every person. So God willing, with a good heart, you do the best you can. And I believe our school board is trying to do that. They were further challenged by the fact that we had the HB 8020 law go in effect in Virginia, which then directed our school boards to enact them, to put them in place. So this was a law that the state education board was saying, you must do. Now go back and meet amongst your school board members and enact it. I was very disappointed by that process because of how our community responded, and I thought it became more of and I'll call it what it is. It was an S show, in the sense where people were not comfortable with just speaking with their voice, but they became very comfortable with trying to shut down someone else's voice. And that was where my disappointment was, is we can disagree, but we don't have to be disagreeable at such extremes. The school board made its decision this week, and I agree with what Ian Sirotkin said. It was the right decision, and more importantly, it was the lawful decision. So as a community, we have to be compliant with the laws. But the fact that they did it and they went forward and they withstood their legal obligations and made that decision, again, I applaud them. I think that was something that our community needed to hear and see. And for me, if I take it away from the school board and I take it from it being the law and the right thing to do, I say it from these eyes as well. It was a safety decision. It was a safety decision for our students. We need our kids to always feel like they can go to school and be safe. That they can go to school and be in a situation where the school system is going to support them. That when they go there, that is a place that they do not have to worry about how they look, how they feel, how they think, that they will always be accepted, because that's how we form the healthiest of our kids, who then become hopefully healthy adults. So it was the right decision, and it was the best decision because it provides safety for our kids. For those individuals who were arguing that it presented an unsafe situation, and I'm sorry, I should have been specific, being very specific about what I'm talking about. It's also with the transgender issues, as far as whether or not now we're going to allow males going into the locker rooms and the bathrooms of females and somehow or another sexually assaulting them. People, look at the data. Data does not support that. The data actually supports that kids who are transgender are the ones who are most apt to be at the targeted as far as being the ones who are being harmed. So when we want to yell and scream, let's yell and scream with facts. Let's yell and scream about what we're doing to make sure that our kids are safe. This puts a huge burden on our school system from a build-out perspective, but there are solutions. The solutions ends up being that we just retrofit some of the schools to figure out where that comes into play. You know, those are things that we want to look at and say this. At the end of the day, what are we here for? If not for the kids, for no one. So that is my position, Nick, as you were asking, as far as in our community, what are the challenges that we faced. And I want to share that. I'm going to throw a question your way, Nick. You were a Loudoun County public school graduate. What were your observations as a student, and then what are your perceptions now as an adult and being a Loudoun County community member?
That's a really good question. Getting some feedback from you, Buta.
Okay, what can I do differently?
All right, I think it's fixed. Nature of doing it live. I think definitely since moving back to Loudoun after college, I've gotten the opportunity to sort of like have that perspective and sort of look at it from an outsider's perspective and reflect on it when I was a student. And I think that I realized that there's a lot of problems that you sort of grew up in and that were factored like into the system, and the inherent expectations since kindergarten through graduation. And you're like, oh, you know, that's just how that teacher is, or that's just how that particular administration treats kids who are this way. And I think that when you give yourself sort of like the space, like as a community member who isn't in that sort of rigid structure that a school can be, where you know, the teacher can be the ultimate authority and you've got the bells that dictate where you can go when, and you realize sort of how those problems existed and persisted. And I think that, you know, going through high school, especially as someone who was gay in high school and out, and realizing that it didn't have to be that way, that there were issues that could be resolved or that weren't okay in the treatment of students, especially trans students in Loudoun County Public Schools. The perspective has been wild, and it makes me actually pretty sad that there might be students who are still in that environment and dealing with those inherent biases or lack of protections. And so I think that this policy, at least that was passed this week, makes me feel hopeful, but also recognizes that there's a significant amount of ground to still cover, and making sure that all students in Loudoun County Public Schools feel like they belong and that they can focus on their education without having to worry about being treated differently just because they're different.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Nick. And I wasn't trying to put you on the spot, but I figured since I had you here, here's a great opportunity to get a frontline perspective. So those are the things that we are dealing with, Loudoun. I know there's also been, I guess part of the concern I also have had as to how these events got so inflamed is the fact that we had individuals who were alleging that those who were pro the policy were having people come in from outside our community to bolster up the support. When in reality, it was the other way around, because we saw some of the groups who were such as Stand Up Virginia. They're not even Loudoun residents. Those individuals who created that group are not. They're coming from Fairfax. And what is also happening is that they are taking this issue and making it very politicized. But it's the part becomes that, to what end? Because it has nothing to do with our school system, I would suggest to you. That really is just a matter of trying to impact individuals who are then going to make our policy decisions long term. We have in our state right now the governor's race, lieutenant governor's race, and the AG's race. And these are races that will be impacted, obviously, by the number of individuals who go and vote and what they choose to vote for. A lot of times issues like this become what we would call the noise makers that really don't address the issues that are being promoted by the candidates that are running. So what we have to be able to do is just to figure out is how do we siphon out that noise and just talk about the issues. And the issues that we want to also start addressing is voting. We saw within the last, I want to say most clearly within the last 3 to 4 years, where there were a lot of laws put in place to try to reduce the number of people who would go out and can go out and vote. We saw it by laws being put in place to suggest that additional IDs need to be made a part of the voting process. People still came out and voted. Then we saw where they were decreasing the number of polls. And that made it hard for individuals who didn't have transportation. So maybe previously they were voting 20 minutes from their house. Now they had to go hours and then wait hours and hours for their vote to count. And still they voted. Once the votes were collected, then there was a battle about whether or not they were going to be certified, whether they were valid and were going to be treated as being lawful votes. That didn't change. People voted and their votes were counted. Then we had the January 6th insurrection. January 6th insurrection was an attempt by somebody to, at that point in time, as I said, is to not count the vote, not to validate the vote, but to also find a way to suggest that that process was not going to be made available for our general populations. Then we've heard allegations that individuals are going to come back in office without there being a lawful process. Well, that's not America. That's not going to happen. And now what we're seeing when you see going back to the school board, and even with my position, there's this recall effort, which in essence at the bottom line at the end of the day is it's an attempt to negate the vote. There's an election. Each party or each individual who chose to ran. The people voted, and then now it's their time to lead as they committed that they were going to lead. So these are things that you're hearing, it's happening, and I suggest to you that they are not based on issues within the local communities, that this is a longer term goal to, again, to impact people who vote, who work hard to vote, who try hard to vote, and just to try to send them the message that their vote is not going to count, and that is 100% un-American, and that is not our democracy. So those are things that concern me on a regular basis as a community member, as a community leader, is to say what message is being sent to our people. And I would say this to you: we will stand strong, we're going to stand firm, and we're going to keep standing together. So I hope I answered all your subparts.
I think you did a great job, Buta. So I think a lot of people would really love to know. We've had a lot of really great conversations. We're coming up on what, maybe 30 episodes already, which is insane. And we've talked to everyone from the Attorney General of Virginia to just last week, Copeland, who was an EMT in Wyoming. So I feel like we've really covered the full range there. And would like to know sort of how those conversations and how those personal stories have sort of impacted our worldview, and how we have used them to sort of inform both the work that we do in Loudoun and also the way that we go through our personal lives.
When we started the show, our goal was really to make sure that we're educating the community on issues that was specifically interesting to them or something that would interest them. For each of our guests, we have an expectation. One is that they're going to talk about a challenge that they identified, an action or a solution that they pursued, and then always leaving us with a message of hope. And I feel every one of our guests was successful in doing that. And in thinking about each of the guests, I always try to figure out, like, well, who was my favorite, or what did I get the most from, or what surprised me the most? And I'm not giving you a lawyer answer when I say every one of them answers that question in their own way. The part that my global takeaway is this: I think it's common practice, at least it's usually my approach, or just my fallback. When I meet somebody, I see them for who they are in that moment. And my mind may trap them to think that that's how they've always been. And when we have these conversations, we get to learn about their experiences and say, wow, now I understand how this is really been your full story and how you got to be here. And everybody always surprises me. So I love that part about our show and our ability to have those conversations with the people that are so gracious to us and agree to come and talk to us in our community.
That's wonderful. I think that I'm right there with you, and sort of looking at the stories that people tell about how they got to where they're at, and sort of filling in all that struggle a lot of the times, and a lot of that resilience is just incredibly, I get floored every single time when people talk about, and so candidly and so personally with us on a Zoom call, all the struggles that they've taken to get where they are, and their success and everything. And I think that it speaks a lot, at least to the power of this show and this medium, and just seamlessly pulling back the curtain on that and showing people that everyone who we think is, larger than life, and they very much are, but they go through some of the same struggles that we do, and they have that ability to overcome. So
To that,
right.
before you ask that, to that point, I think you just made me reflect on one of our guests, and that was when we were, I think maybe it might have been our second or third show, so I apologize. But we had Elizabeth Guzman on, and at that time she was a candidate for the lieutenant governor. She is a delegate out of the Prince William County area. And what my takeaway from it, and again, I don't know why it surprised me, but my takeaway from her was, oh my God, her experience is our very real experience where she was an immigrant. She was a young mom, chose to leave her native country to come to the United States to pursue educational opportunities that she knew she would not be able to get where she was born, and came to the United States and literally worked 2 or 3 jobs, raising her kids, went to community college, and then ended up having like 3 or 4 advanced degrees. And you're thinking, my God, that is the epitome of the American dream. That's the epitome of what America presents as opportunities. And that floored the heck out of me, because I in real time, we got to hear her story. So that was amazing. So sorry, Nick, for extending that, but yeah.
No, absolutely. I mean, when I was talking, I was thinking in my head about Elizabeth Guzman and her story. So I'm glad that we were on the same page there. So we have a question in the chat. I'm going to pop it up there. How do you make time for everything / everyone? Speaking from experience, you always show up to events when I ask you.
I appreciate that question, and it's funny again what perceptions are. And my thought is always this: I wish I could do more. So I appreciate the question, and Elena, thank you for having that perception. I do try to be there whenever and however I can, because I've been blessed throughout my life that I've had people who've been able to step in when I've needed them, and they've been able to impact my life in a way that either it's been a situation where they've lent a hand so that I'm not falling, or they've helped me rise when I have fallen, or they put a foot in my tail when I needed to keep going. That's all part of our community, and I love the people that we have in Loudoun County. One of the biggest things I think that we all have learned between the crises, just the challenges that we have, is together we really can do better. So I do the best I can. How I do it, I think I just don't overthink it. I just do what I can in the moment and hope that that's impactful and helpful to somebody.
All right. So I think that wraps up all the pre-submitted questions that we have and the ones in the chat. So, I mean, we've got some really great conversations lined up, Buta, if you want to talk about what folks can look forward to coming up on Get the Tea, and sort of where you'd like to see this show head going forward.
Excellent. And yes, so what we will continue to do is we will continue to have our show airing at 10 o'clock on Saturday mornings. We are still looking for our community to guide us as to who you would like to hear from and what topics or what individuals. We want to address the challenges that our community is facing right now, and I would suggest this is that also those experiences that are related to COVID. Please, if you have yet to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you are not 100% behind wearing of the mask, please wear the mask. Hopefully we all wash our hands, also keeping our distance of 6 feet or greater. And that really is just so that we can make sure that we are protecting one another. We had a challenging 16 months that a lot of spirits were broken. Homes were broken because jobs were lost. Homes were broken because people were lost. We've lost loved ones. So we have to do what we can do to make sure that we're protecting ourselves. From that COVID experience, we are going to continue to talk to people who, are dealing with that impact. And I would love to be able to focus on the impact on our kids. So if you're aware of anyone that you're familiar with that you think would be great on being able to say the following, that can these young people speak to us, and would they be okay with verbalizing to us and with us how they have survived these last 16 months? Because if you think about we as adults, how we've been impacted in our relationships, I can only imagine how much greater that impact has been on our kids. So we would love to be able to do that. We want to talk to local businesses. How have you been surviving? How have you been thriving? And then we will always talk about issues that are on a greater forefront, which at times will deal with politics. It'll deal with the school board. It will deal with the governor's races, the lieutenant governor races, as well as the attorney generals. We want to be able just to hear from people as to what are they interested in doing. I will share this with you that what we want to do at the end of the day is we want to be relevant to you. It's not about what we want to see that gets promoted. We want to know what you want to see that gets promoted. So that's our ask to you. So please do me a favor. Nick has put up in the chat as far as our link, which is for our website, theteawithbuta.com. Submit some suggestions. If you yourself want to nominate yourself for a topic, there's no shame in that. That's great opportunity for us to be able to do that. So thank you.
All right. Well, we thank everyone for joining this morning. Hopefully, we can look forward to doing more live episodes like this in the future, pending the cooperation of technology and schedules. But as always, we super appreciate all of our viewers. And again, you can watch previous episodes, submit questions for guests, and submit suggestions for guests you'd like to see at theteawithbuta.com. But until then, we'll see you next Saturday at 10 a.m.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week.